I'm Alex Lawson, filling in for Richard, and I am very fortuitously or timing-wise, this really worked out. I'm joined by Tim Karr, Senior Director of Strategy for Free Press. The reason the timing worked out is, I believe, just like an hour ago, the FCC basically accelerated the right-wing takeover of local broadcast television with the corporation, the Sinclair Corporation, who toe the Trumpian line. They are somewhat more Fox News than Fox, and they have the really insidious thing is that they are delivered into millions of people's homes as local news, which people generally trust more than cable news. Tim, first of all, thank you so much for joining us here on the Zero Hour.
Hi, Alex.
Tell us a little bit, give us the background, and then what did the FCC just do?
Sure. And as you mentioned, Sinclair Broadcast Group is a television conglomerate that has been very aggressively buying up local television stations. Interestingly, they tend to focus on television stations in battleground states where they can have political impact on key decisions. But they're also in the process, they proposed a purchase of Tribune Media, which was another local television conglomerate. And that purchase would give them more than 230 stations, covering 72% of the national audience. There are supposed to be rules in place at the FCC that limit that scale of local television conglomerate. There are broadcast rules that are in place, and they have been aggressively imposed for the most part until today, when the FCC, under Trump appointee Ajit Pai, has decided that he would roll back a series of those rules, a cross-ownership rule, a number of other rules that will have the effect of basically clearing a path for Sinclair to continue to grow at this scale.
And let's be clear. You said, interestingly, they primarily focus on battleground states. I know, you work this issue all the time on what I'm saying is my rhetoric is a little freer because this is what they're doing. They are wielding news as propaganda for political purposes. It's why my business partner, Kamon Freeman, and I created We Act Radio, the first radio station east of the river in Washington, D.C., and now the first TV station east of the river in Washington, D.C., because we know the power of the media, that if you control the story, then you control the outcome. If we can't tell our own stories, then we will not have any power. And that's what's at stake here. I know you know this, and I know the folks who are tuning into a show like the Zero Hour understand the power of truth tellers like RJ Eskow. We've got Thom Hartmann, and we do have a network of truth tellers who are speaking for the people and who are trying to increase the ability of the people to tell our own stories. But let's be clear, what we're up against are billion-dollar corporations who have a 30-year plan for taking over all the communication channels that they can. If they had their way, they would own 100% of the information that you are able to access. So what's happened with the FCC? It used to be understood the danger of this, the danger of one company or a handful of companies, a cartel, owning too much of the media. What happened to change that?
Well, you have two forces in play. One that's been in play for decades, which is industry capture. The FCC has been captured by the broadcast industry in this case, where over decades it has increasingly changed policies to benefit powerful broadcasters. And there's an association called the National Association of Broadcasters based in Washington, D.C., that is one of the most powerful lobbies in this country. And they spend money on members of Congress. They lobby the FCC. And over decades, they've succeeded in turning policy to their favor. The second thing that's happened is we have a Trump administration that is very aggressively moving to take over the media message. You probably are familiar with Trump's very aggressive Twitter feed, where he often targets any news outlet that questions his authority for criticism. He calls them fake news. He calls them losers. And on the other hand, you have Sinclair, which is a very Trump-friendly media conglomerate. They have a long history of serving very conservative causes, including trying to air a film that was critical of John Kerry just prior to the 2004 presidential election. And even through the years, they've done other things, forcing right-wing commentary onto the local stations that they own. So you have all of these forces coming together: conservative media group, conservative administration, Chairman Ajit Pai at the FCC, that seems to be Trump's henchman in all of these things, that resulted in today's decision, which effectively kicked away a lot of the controls that prevented a conglomerate from getting this powerful. So yes, it's a very dangerous situation. And my organization, Free Press, intends to bring the FCC to court. We already plan to sue the FCC. And we're pretty confident that we can get this decision declared illegal based on the media ownership limits that Congress has already passed.
It's great news, and thank you for all of the work that you do. I sort of start this with the Reagan-Thatcher change. It was important to allow the moneyed interests, the billionaire class, to start to accumulate more power in the media at the same time that the policies that they started shredding, the policies that worked for the working families in this country and around the world, and created this upward redistribution of wealth where a handful of billionaires, a global oligarchy, is able to just suck money out of the people all around the world and in this country. And the press, a free press, is actually a massive check on that, because people don't want these global oligarchs, these billionaire class, people like Wilbur Ross, who's the Secretary of Commerce, who is a shining example of self-dealing, just exposed by the Paradise Papers, which was the press taking this information and telling people this is what's going on. They're reaching their hands into your pocket, stealing your money and stashing it away in the Cayman Islands and other islands, and using shell corporations to hide that money. That's why they're terrified. These billionaire class are terrified of the media, because the media can tell the story of what's actually going on. And the billionaire class have their propaganda, oh no, it's not the billionaires and Wall Street who are destroying Main Street. It's some other, they point at, it's some immigrants, or it's unions, or whatever their propaganda is. That's not going to work unless they have these channels, these validators on local and cable news to amplify that. So I see it as one crucial part of this process of creating and empowering a global oligarchy. we say at We Act Radio and on the Zero Hour, before you have a political revolution, you have to have a media revolution. We need independent voices, truth tellers out there. And we need organizations like yours fighting not only to stop the acceleration of this accumulating more and more and more power in the hands of fewer companies, but we want to go on the offense, right? We want to fight to go to we should be breaking up these big companies. We should be putting in place laws that make it illegal for companies to own even as much as they do right now. We should be going back to recognizing the danger of having a small number of corporations control the information that we receive. Is there also a movement on the offense at the same time as we defend against these actions by the Trump administration to go on the offense?
There has been a movement for quite some time, and you may remember back in 2003, during the run-up to the war in Iraq, how the mainstream media outlets lined up behind George W. Bush in defense of his rationale for that war. Their argument about weapons of mass destruction, they weren't sufficiently questioned by the media, and were the main justification at the time for going into war. At that time, there was a similar effort at the FCC to try to do away with these media ownership limits, and there was a mass uprising. More than 2 million people contacted the FCC and said, how dare you do away with these media ownership limits? This consolidated media, this mainstream media, these outlets, as you've mentioned, just failed us, failed to question the rationale for this war, failed to question the Bush administration. And here we are stuck in a war in Iraq that to this day, fast forward 14 years, is still ongoing. Of course, it's expanded to Afghanistan and other parts of the world. So that, the media played a very significant role in allowing that to go forth. And today we're facing a lot of the similar problems. But we also have a very strong coalition of organizations such as Free Press and others who are speaking out against this and who believe that the solution to creating a more democratic and diverse media system is not by handing power to these large conglomerates, but actually breaking up their holdings. And the FCC has a role to play there. Sadly, to date, it failed miserably in that. But there's also renewed interest in antitrust, looking at these new conglomerates. You may remember Comcast, who's the largest cable television provider, bought NBC Universal, which produces a lot of television content, movies, and other things. And so you're seeing these kinds of new media conglomerates. There's also AT&T is attempting to buy Time Warner right now. They're trying to create these new conglomerates that not only control the delivery of the message, Comcast, of course, is an internet access provider, but the message itself. NBC Universal controls NBC News, MSNBC, and another of other outlets. The same is true for what's going on with AT&T and Time Warner, which owns Comcast, HBO, and a number of other properties. So we have this new form of media consolidation, which is just as worrying as the media that we saw failing us so miserably back in 2003 as the U.S. went to war in Iraq.
Tim, that's exactly where I kind of come into really understanding the power of the media, was when they lied us into this war. And it was so apparent to so many people that there was just this drumbeat that drove us there. And that's why why my business partner, Kimon Freeman, and I at We Act Radio, why we started We Act Radio, to empower independent voices and make sure that we're not in a position where that propaganda can just proceed unchallenged. But we are in there are new dangers. You have platform monopolies with Google and Facebook. This is a very complex issue, and I want folks to understand that they should get organized. They should go to your website, They should learn about the issue. They should understand that if we let the billionaire class get total control of the information, of the ability to tell stories, we're not going to be able to fight on all these other fronts. So in the last 30 seconds here, tell everybody how they can get involved, how they can support the work that you're doing.
Well, we just sent 450,000 messages to the FCC signed by people across the country. And you can learn more about how to get involved in fighting media consolidation and supporting independent local media through our website, freepress.net. We also work with a coalition of a lot of other groups. You can get access to their websites through a lot of the resources that we offer online.
Tim Karr, thank you so much for joining us on the Zero Hour. Tim Karr from freepress.net. We hope you'll come back and join us again.
My pleasure. Thanks.